Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Wednesday, November 20th. Still no movement on the Jaguars coaching front office, any of that stuff. It is the bye week coming up, so don't know a timeline if a move or multiple moves could be made this week. Don't know. We've kind of been left up in the air, or it's been left up in the air here, what's going on. No transparency from Shad Khan really so far on that. So don't know. Still could be moves made during the bye week, towards the end of the bye week potentially. Maybe not till the end of the season. We just don't know. But I know fans are curious and have been asking about potential Jaguars general manager candidates, because the Jaguars, they need to clean house when it comes to the coaching staff, the front office general manager. They absolutely do. And I'm not saying every single person has to go, but they need to move on from Trent Baalke. They need to move on from Doug Peterson. It is not working, right? So we do have a few potential GM candidates that I'm going to look at today. This is by no means like a top 4 list, which that's what we're going to look at. 4 guys here. It's not definitive. It's based off a few hours of research and prior knowledge about some of these guys. It's really difficult to identify from a media perspective or fan perspective who would make a really good potential general manager, unless they're retreads, guys that have been in front of the media a lot, guys that have made a lot of decisions. You just don't know exactly what they bring to the table, generally speaking, on a day-to-day. You just don't. You don't see them a whole lot. You don't get a whole lot of access, right? But I can tell y'all, I think probably the most important thing from a general manager and a coach, beyond identifying talent from the GM spot, workplace culture, probably above all. Like, you need to foster an environment where not just football side, the entire organization, people want to come in. They want to come in and work and bust their butt. And you want to find guys that, and all sorts of people, not just guys, people, scouts, cap guys, coaches, folks that want to bust their butt to achieve greatness and have a team first mindset, right? And so you've got to foster that environment, and you've got to identify the right people underneath you. I think having a backbone, being a real down-to-earth, focused, responsible, and accountable person is critical for the general manager and the head coach. And it can be difficult to find that. And guys going down the list of the front office, of the coaching staff, right? It's critical. Those two things are critical for long-term growth and sustained success in the NFL, in my opinion. So whoever it is, they've got to bring those types of traits. You haven't seen that from a Trent Baalke. Before that, Dave Caldwell, I think, was very hit and miss, and obviously had some weird situations. He was the GM, top decision maker, and then they hire an EVP in Tom Coughlin, and Tom Coughlin does some good things, but also maybe the game passed him by a little bit when it comes to, some of the issues he had with finding players, and the Jaguars ultimately ending up being on a list where the NFLPA says, free agents, be wary of signing with the Jaguars, right? Before that, obviously you had Gene Smith, who did not do a good job. The list goes on, but the Jaguars need to find a head coach and a GM that have a clear mindset, unified vision, no BS, no agenda beyond just fostering a good workplace environment and winning football games and competing for a Super Bowl. So with all that said, I've got 2 guys that so far, based on, combing through different front office staffs and trying to dig into who these people are and what they do and what they've done, there are 2 guys at the top for me that I'm really excited about. And again, this is by no means complete final. This is just an early look at a few guys that I think could be interesting. And again, the top two names here for me, I am really excited about the potential for them, not just in Jacksonville, but whenever they get an opportunity, I'll be interested to follow their career as general manager. I think both of them will be general managers at some point. I want to start with Chad Alexander, the Chargers assistant general manager. It is his first year on the job in Los Angeles. Chargers have a new front office and coaching staff, so he's working right now under Joel Ortiz and with Jim Harbaugh and that whole group. He spent several seasons with the Jets as the director of player personnel, and before that worked with the Ravens for 2 decades. I think when you look at what the Jets have done during his time there, and of course wasn't making all the decisions. He was working with Joe Douglas there, who Joe Douglas just got fired yesterday. I think the work they did with the Jets and that roster, outside of obviously missing on Zach Wilson during Chad Alexander's time there, was impressive. And I like Joe Douglas. I think Joe Douglas has a good eye for talent. I think he's a good dude. I think that he could probably serve in a large capacity in a new front office or established front office somewhere. I think he probably will. Like, I don't think he's going to be looking for work for long. Probably not right back into as a general manager, but I think he'll have a high-ranking position somewhere in a front office very soon. So I like what the Jets did, again, outside of drafting Zach Wilson. But sometimes those types of decisions, it's not just up to the GM or the director of player personnel. It goes to the top, and you see owners that are a little bit intrusive or, a little bit too hands-on. I'm not saying that's what happened there, but we do know Woody Johnson has a history of being a little bit of a control freak. So back to Chad Alexander. His dad was a college coach and NFL coach, worked on the Miami Hurricanes staff and the Dallas Cowboys staff. So Chad Alexander growing up was around football and was around big-time football. The Hurricanes at their peak, the Cowboys at their peak. He was around those teams. And, he had, different jobs, ball boy, whatever, different things with those teams. And so he's been in the thick of it. And then 20 years working with Ozzie Newsome, Eric DeCosta, Joel Ortiz, all these guys in Baltimore. I think he's probably ready. And again, I like a lot of what the Jets have done recently outside of the handling of the quarterback position. And he left before the whole Aaron Rodgers debacle, so good for him. I think the Chargers got uber competitive, uber quick this offseason. I loved their draft. I really did. I thought they had a fantastic draft this past year. I thought they made some good decisions to get this team competitive really quickly with Jim Harbaugh and kind of identify players that fit what Jim Harbaugh needs to get this thing going. And the Ravens have been excellent at drafting and finding free agents and being aggressive with trades throughout the last 20 years plus. I think one of the coolest things we heard from Chad Alexander in this research, he was asked about culture, and Daniel Jeremiah asked him actually pretty recently about culture. And he said culture to him is all about genuine transparency. I absolutely love that. I think there's been a clear lack of that under Trent Baalke. Probably not a lack of that under Tom Coughlin, right? But under Trent Baalke, I think there was a lack of transparency. Still is. Right? He's still in Jacksonville. But the genuine transparency part of it, I love it. I think Chad Alexander would be really interesting potential candidate. Now, the next one is probably the name that everyone wants to hear. We're going to get to that. But first, got to remind y'all to check out Underdog Fantasy for pick'em best ball, and a whole lot more. You can use code Duval Daily on their easy-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. This season, Underdog is running a special promo or bonus almost every single day. Like Profit Boost, you can pump up your winnings in just a tap when you apply the boost to eligible entries. There are tons of options around the league this week. Obviously, no Jaguars game, so you can't pick a Jaguars opposing running back to score a touchdown, which would have been a good bet the last few weeks. But you want to take a running back to score this upcoming week. Underdog has Vulture Protection to rescue your pick'em. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Duval Daily to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Shout out to Underdog Fantasy. If you're supporting them, you are supporting us. So this next name, Ray Agnew from the Detroit Lions. Jaguars fans and owner, everybody involved, got an up-close look at what Ray Agnew has helped achieve for the Detroit Lions as the assistant general manager over the last several years. He's been around a lot of success with Brad Holmes. He was with Brad Holmes in Los Angeles with the Rams. He's a former player, director of pro personnel with the Rams from 2017 to 2020, was a part of the Super Bowl run where they weren't able to take home the Lombardi, but obviously helped lay the foundation for that 2022 Super Bowl as well. Saw a lot of big-time talent added to that roster. Surely one of the guys who also believed in making the trade for Jared Goff, I would think, and getting him in that building in Detroit. So that's been a coup for them, the way they've been able to build the offense around Jared Goff and the rest of those guys' strengths with Ben Johnson. You would imagine he believes strongly in the run game and the offensive line. He was a former defensive lineman, big-time draft pick. You look at the Lions, and they have one of the most complete rosters in the league. And I love how they had a weakness and they attacked it with their secondary over the last couple years. You know, Brian Branch, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold. They brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. They brought in some other vets last year to try to shore it up, and then they really dropped the hammer on it this year and said, we're going to build one of the better secondaries in the league for Aaron Glenn and that defense. You would think he would really understand the culture part of it, having worked with Brad Holmes, Sean McVay, Dan Campbell. I think that would be clear. Maybe he could be a part of the package, a front office with Ben Johnson, which everybody is excited about in Jacksonville and really around the league. Any fan base that sees coaching staff as a need, everybody wants Ben Johnson right now. So again, former player Ray Agnew, big-time draft pick, been through it all in this league. He's got a good sense of humor. When you see him, listen to him talk, he talks about, and no surprise coming from the Detroit Lions, grit, smart, passionate, love for the game. Those are the traits he's looking for from players. And one quote I heard from him that I really appreciated when he's evaluating players: how hard do you play when you're losing? And I'm not saying that because the Jaguars are always losing, right? But I'm saying that because I agree with him. When guys are busting their tail, despite the odds, despite things not going well, and playing good football in adverse situations, not just packing it in, that's a sign of football character and folks that really appreciate the game. So Ray Agnew from the Detroit Lions, the assistant GM, maybe as a front office duo with coaching staff led by Ben Johnson, could make a lot of sense. I know people would be excited about that. Now we've got a couple more names we're going to quickly look at. Andy Weidel, assistant GM for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hearing him talk, I really like his mindset, like the way he talks about the game. He's a former offensive lineman in college, talks about loves scouting offensive line, and the Jaguars need some help on the offensive line. And you just look at what the Steelers did to fortify their offensive line last year in the draft. I thought it was absolutely incredible. Getting Zach Frazier, getting the kid out of South Dakota State, and obviously Troy Fatanu, who, Frazier, Fatanu, and Having trouble remembering the kid from South Dakota State's name, the interior offensive lineman, Mason something, but they were all guys that I loved in the draft last year. So I like his eye for talent there. He worked in Philly for a long time. He's been influenced by, some of the big time pro personnel and front office guys around the league. So been with the Steelers for a few years, worked in Philly for a long time. I think that he's got the type of resume and talks about football the way I think I would want somebody to talk about it, leading this football team. Mike Borgonzi from KC, somebody whose name has been coming up for years. He's an interesting one. Been on that staff forever. He's been around Brett Veach, Andy Reid, John Dorsey before Brett Veach was the general manager there. Prior to being assistant GM, he was the director of football operations, and he came up on the pro personnel side of things. So he got the pro side of it coming up, and then the last several years, he's been kind of over it all, being the assistant GM and the director of football operations under Brett Veach. I think the Chiefs' model for attacking the draft and attacking free agency and trades in a way that can help your football team in the short term, not have huge long-term impacts necessarily, but you kind of know when to strike. Like I love them going and getting Josh Uche and getting DeAndre Hopkins to try to shore up this roster for the playoff run, right? I know they're coming off a loss to the Bills, but that's neither here nor there. He's been there for all the big hits in the draft. Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, all the guys more recently as well. And there's been many of them that they've drafted really successfully. L'Jarius Sneed, Charvarius Ward, Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton, George Karlaftis. The list goes on and on. I think they do a really good job. And he's also been in a spot where we have our quarterback on a second contract. How do we build around that? I love how proactive the Chiefs are, again, in trading and acquiring talent. So definitely another interesting name to look at. Of these guys, obviously the fact that Ray Agnew could be a part of a Ben Johnson front office would be extremely enticing. I think Chad Alexander's got the right makeup for it as well. I think that Weidl and Borgonzi are certainly names to keep an eye on too, and we'll continue to look at general managers, potential executives for the Jacksonville Jaguars moving forward, and more coaching candidates as well. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out jinjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, become a channel member here on YouTube. Y'all have a good one.